Our next presenter is Justin Bernard. Justin is homeschooled in the Red Oak area, and he is the son of Sabrina and Nicholas Johnson. His presentation is titled Polli'Nation, Helping the Nation Help Pollination. Justin.
Hey, everything else? Alright. My name is Justin Bernard, and my project was on Polli'Nation. Welcome. I just want to thank you guys all for coming, listening today. I'm here to talk to you guys about pollination and how I was able to teach the youth and adults around me about pollination. Education in the community. That was one of the main focuses of my project. I wanted to take my bees around and help show people what they could do and how they impacted the environment. I felt this was a very important part of sustainability in our agriculture. I also used the media to keep the public updated with how my project was going. I had several newspapers, and I'll explain later on about how each of them impacted how I was able to connect with audiences. Alright, project overview. Teaching about pollination through beekeeping. So I've been keeping bees for a couple of years now. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a great experience for me. I have a 5-year-old brother, and he's basically been right by my side learning everything with me. And I felt that with him being scared of the bees and worried that they'd sting him, it would be great to teach him things such as how to be safe around bees and how to live alongside them. I also continued to update the public on that part of my project as well, telling them how the bees were doing and how they were reacting in the hive. Alright, my project goals were to educate youth. So I wanted to kind of get the youth involved in part of beekeeping since it's such a dwindling population. I also wanted to educate some adults. Obviously, the kids can't do it on their own, so adults would need to help. I helped educate my parents on bees, and they helped me a lot with the projects, and I worked with other beekeepers around the region to help teach myself things about bees. Next, I needed to have a well-informed community. It was just an important part of being around the bees. They needed to know how to be safe, how to not kill off the bees using insecticides or other sprays. Alright, let's start. Education for myself. Obviously, you can't do anything without having a little bit of education to start and being able to teach yourself. Hello. Alright, so education from others. I used other beekeepers around my area to help teach me how to work around the observation hive. I had never worked with one. I had just recently got into beekeeping. The observation hive was kind of a new experience for me. So sharing knowledge with others. You want to come on out? This is my wonderful mother. She's going to be a model for today. Sharing knowledge with others. I was able to teach my mom how the hive worked and show her some of the tools, such as the observation hive. There's a couple frames inside, and the hive tool, which I'll explain more about later. If you step aside, that'd be great. Thank you. Educating youth. Like Hoover, I also wanted to show my humanitarian side through educating younger people about something that meant a lot to me. He was able to teach youth about how they could thrive when they had very little food, and he was able to give some food to them through his volunteering efforts and setting up volunteering efforts. Also, he said the advancement of knowledge must be translated into increasing health and education for the children. I felt that was something that really drove into my presentation because I went specifically into helping the youth and being able to have them be able to produce their own food and be able to see how it comes about and how the pollination helps these things come along. Alright, educating adults. This is where my mother comes in. She was able to come into the hive with me, and we dumped bees into the hive. As you can see, there's about 3,000 to 4,000 bees in that little tiny box. And you'd think, okay, be gentle, it'd upset them if you drop them or anything. Well, you kind of get the box and you shake it, just vigorously. And all the bees fall into the frames. You put the top on, you leave it sit there for a couple of days. After that, we went back into the hive. We found the queen, which was kind of a cool process. She's a little bigger, and when we originally started, we didn't have her marked, so it was a really hard thing to find when you didn't know what you were doing. I also had the opportunity to have a bigger hive, as my bees produced very quickly. They were able to produce 5 boxes, 3 boxes of honey and 2 boxes of brood, which is just baby bees. And it was nice to have that big of a section in the bees because I was able to fill an observation hive and show the youth at my county fair and show the adults at some of our meetings for Farm Bureau. I have the observation hive with me today. It obviously has no bees in it because it is winter. The bees don't like to be out in the cold as we don't, so I didn't get time to make little bee jackets, so we had to settle for just not bringing them along. Alright, publicity was a major part in this project. I don't think, if I wouldn't have gotten any publicity, I wouldn't have been able to talk to anyone. No one would have approached me, I would have had to approach everyone. So the newspapers that I received publicity from were the Daily Nonpareil, which is a huge newspaper near us. I was honored to be a part of that. I actually got a call from them in the middle of my workday, and I answered not knowing who it was, and they said, do you have time to do a quick 5-minute interview? And they told me what it was for, and I was extremely overwhelmed with excitement for that. The Omaha World Herald was also a large newspaper near us. It's around the same region, and it covers a lot wider area and helped a lot more people become aware of pollinators. The Valley News Today and the Red Oak Express are 2 local newspapers, which they didn't have as large of an impact area, but they did have an impact in my area, which allowed people to have open conversation with me and discuss things with me about how bees would affect them and how they could maybe plant flowers to help bees or how they could live alongside bees. Publicity on the radio. This is my favorite. I get to talk to people. Radio stations that helped me out were KJAN out of Atlantic, Iowa, which is a town about 45 minutes from me. They actually came down to my county fair because they heard about my project and wanted to know more about it and wanted to talk about it with me so that the public could be informed. And KCSI out of Red Oak is always ever helpful with everything we do. But he, Jerry is his name, he would call me in probably once every couple of weeks, and we would talk over how the bees were coming along, how my presentations were coming along, and the status on how this scholarship was going as he took an active interest in that. So, big news. I received Island of the Week from Representative David Young, and this was a great experience for me. I didn't realize how big of an impact I was having until this point. I didn't realize that I was impacting people all over Iowa, and I just feel that this was the moving step in saying I had an impact. I made a footprint. I made the first step. Alright, well, while we're solving the technical difficulties, I'll explain to you guys the equipment. The equipment's one of my favorite parts in this presentation. My mother's modeling the bee suit. That's basically to keep the bees from stinging through. It's pretty lightweight material, it's breathable, it is also very thick. It keeps the bees from being able to get their stingers all the way through. I think you're the only one to get stung in that suit. And next, I'll be talking about the hive tool. This is a nifty little thing. You use it to pry open the hives, and that's the way that I was able to get the frames out. And it was very important to use this, as if you use your fingers, you basically cannot do it with gloves. And bare hands around bees, not a great experience. So the observation hive, this is the coolest part. This is what everyone got to see. So the observation hive, obviously, we found this out at a sale, and then we painted it green. We basically refurbished all the locks because I had the lock for our fair if I wanted to do presentations there. It has 2 frames inside. They are both wax frames, and they've been spun out of all the honey. This is where the bees would insert their honey that we'd use for food. Here's some of that honey. It's very good. I like to share it with the children that I help teach. Bees, important part of the hive. So that was one of the biggest attention drawers during all my presentations. I was able to show kids the bees, and it would draw them in their attention to my booth if I was set up next to many of the people who were presenting. So melissophobia is a bee phobia. It's kind of an interesting little fact. Oh, all right, thank you. Appreciate that. Oh. All right, other beekeepers were helpful during the presentations. They helped me set up, and they helped me figure out what I wanted to talk about. The project outcome: my community became involved with pollinators. The people in my area became aware of how to live alongside pollinators, which was very important as pollinators are obviously dying out. So it's helping the pollinators in my area thrive. This project enabled me to figure out how Herbert Hoover produced his humanitarian efforts. It introduced me to the community of pollinators, and it helped me introduce our community to pollinators.
Time's up.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, Justin, you made presentations to students and to adults. What was the setting? Was that like at schools or county fairs or special meetings you arranged? How did you get the kids together to talk to them?
All right, so I did some presentations at our county fair. It was a local YMCA, came with their day camp. I had the ability to talk to those children. I talked at our local FFA chapter, and I've talked to every member about how I keep bees. I've talked about it within the 4-H groups in my area, and I have many more meetings scheduled with talking about bees and how they could get into those with their clubs. And those are kind of my outreach programs. With the adults, I was able to talk about farmers meetings, at maybe a Farm Bureau meeting, and I also talked at my local Iowa corn growers meeting. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Was your primary emphasis, just to clarify my thinking here, to inform people about bees and being safe around bees and understanding them, or did you move into the issue of the fact that bees are dying and the whole pollination process is really under critical study right now here in the United States? How did those two issues balance out in your presentations?
All right, so essentially I just tried to teach children that bees were okay and that they were safe. Obviously you don't want to go near them and break into a hive, but if they're around you, if you don't swatter them, they'll live amongst you and be fine. I also tried to teach them how to go about getting into a hive. I thought that was kind of a cool process in bees. I didn't go much into the pollination portion. I talked more along the lines of how important the pollination was and not how it's done. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Have you noticed any impact from your efforts in terms of other folks taking up bees?
Alright, so I've had 3 other people in my area purchase beehives, and I've gone to every one of their hives and helped them out with the process of getting started, as they didn't know much about it. And I've kind of opened that door through all the publicity that I've done. I've opened that door for them to come to me, ask questions about how to get into beekeeping, why it's important, and essentially I'm trying to draw more people into the topic of pollination.
Excuse me. As a follow-up to the first question, when you talked with the adult groups, did those conversations lead more into the discussions around the chemicals and what's causing that decline in the bee population? And were there questions around that? Like, what are some of the things that can be done differently to change that?
Actually, that was a really important portion of it, as I came to a lot of farmer meetings. So that gave me the opportunity to talk to the people who were spraying pesticides. And there's some ways that bees can be kept in the hive while they spray, and there's other ways that the farmers can spray chemicals that are safe for bees. So I had the ability to talk to them about how they could live alongside bees and not harm them, and at the same time they can still go on with their rituals of how they like to farm. That's a really important part, because that's a huge part of how the hives were dying and why we had such a shortage of bees. Any other questions?
I know you mentioned the day camp that came, I think, to the county fair for a little bit. What were the age range of the kids? Like, were they mainly younger? Were they high schoolers?
So the day camp itself was probably, I'd say, 7 to 14-year-olds, and then the FFA chapter would have been throughout the high school, and then the adults were the next step. So it just covered every age range, from anyone who could start to understand, starting with my brother who was 5, all the way up to adults that just wanted to learn.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
Justin.